Okay.
Week 4, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
7.
Oops. Okay.
Week 4, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
7.
Oops. Okay. Okay, so we are live now.
Week 4, I think.
And you are the host. Yeah. Okay.
7.
Oops. Okay.
So should we give a few more minutes, Sonal?
Yeah, we already have like 4 people. Sorry, 3 people. But few other might be joining. Let me ping to the Python session because they cannot join.
Give a few more minutes, Sonal.
They cannot join this Zoom. I'll send it. Yeah, we already have. Okay, I think Kannan, you can start now.
Okay. All right. Hi, guys. How is everyone?
Hi, Kannan. Doing good.
Okay, I think Kannan, you can start now.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Hi, guys. How is everyone?
Hi, Kannan. Doing good.
Okay, I think Kannan, you can start.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So what do we have? So I want to let's review the course, right? We talked about 13 or 14 chapters. I don't know if you guys did anything during the week, but I just figured that I'm going to do a quick summary, like maybe go through assignments, expressions, and print statements, and then maybe a little bit of if then else conditions. And I'm going to leave the while and for loops to you guys you can play with it. Same with iterations and comprehensions. And then I want to jump into function basics. Okay. And there is a lot more ground to cover, and I'm not sure if we would have time to review everything. So there's the Python cookbook is pretty advanced. So I want to understand if you guys want me to get into data structures, maybe next week we can do that. But before we do that, I want to make sure you guys are comfortable with this content in the Learning Python book, right? So I want a quick poll. What do you guys prefer? Should I go through every chapter? Because for this is, I think, the fourth week, if I'm right. So I could easily spend the next 4 weeks on all these things, and then maybe start another session for Python cookbook, or we could jump into the Python cookbook starting next week, and go into advanced topics. So I just need to get some feedback from you guys.
A review would be good, but I'll go with what others
Sorry, who's talking?
think.
Rishma?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't hear what you said, Rishma.
Can you hear me now?
It's very feeble, but keep.
Hang on, let me wear my headphone. Just a second. Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying a review would be nice to just go over, but I'll go with what others feel. So if they want to jump into the Python cookbook, I'm fine, but I would prefer to review.
Yeah. So, there are so many chapters here. I can try and wrap this. Like, if you look at every part five modules, there's a big picture, and then you have object-oriented programming, uh, exceptions management, some advanced topics here. I mean, we could skip the advanced topics, um, but all these, like the 36 chapters, we could bear. We planned for 8 weeks of 2 hours each, and we could barely finish in the next four, whatever all the remaining chapters. I mean, that may be one approach where we can just do this learning Python thing fully covered and then think about data structures later. But my fear is that if we jump into data structures and advanced topics, we might not make the connection with these topics here.
Yeah, Kannan, you take the decision, whichever you think is good. But yeah, if you ask me personally, I would feel it's better to cover new topics because we already have the recordings if we want to review.
No, that's not what the point is. The point is that we're still here. We're still chapter 12, 13, right? There are 36 chapters here or 41 chapters here. My question was, do we spend the remaining 4 weeks, including today, in covering all these new topics, or we jump into this other book?
No, we should finish this book first because it doesn't make any sense if the base is not clear. We jump into the cookbook, then it's not
Okay.
make sense.
Okay, that's what I was thinking too. We should focus on this book first, go through each one of them. So, okay, with that said, Shailesh, does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So I think we were doing this last week, the statements, and then we ended up in statements. So what I want to do is um, go through this statements, review that uh, today, and then I want to go into assignments and expressions, um, and then I want to go into some print statements in Python, and and then I want to go into some conditional, which is if then else conditions. I have some samples, and then I want to jump into some functions, and that's the plan I have for today. So that said, I don't know if I have the content for all the 2 hours, but we'll see how much we get through. And If we have to end early, we'll end early, and then we'll pick up the pieces next week. I got a little busy this weekend with a few things, so let me try and do whatever I can. So these are the things that I prepared. So let's look into the statements, right? So we have this. So so in this case, we talked about x equals 5, y equals 10. We're checking if x is greater than y. In this case, it's not. Uh, then you're assigning, if x is greater than y, then you're assigning the values x equals 1 and y equals 2, right? When you print x and y, you're still seeing the old values, which is 5 and 10, right? And the next one is we're checking if x is less than y, then you assign 1 and 2. So then because x is less than y, just 5 is less than 10, then you get 1 and 2 here. Then we talked about statements spanning multiple lines, right? So you can have a list. The elements of the list can go across multiple lines. And when you print my list, you can see the list is entered here. So the next one was we had different versions of this while loop. So in this case, we're saying the first while loop is uh, it says reply. We're checking for an input text here, and if the value equals top, then it breaks. If not, it's going to give you an uppercase of. So if I do hello, it's going to give me a uppercase of the message that I typed here. And when I stop, it exits that while loop, right? So if reply equals stop, then it break. So within this while loop, we also talked about the indentation, right? In Python, you have this indentation. So anything when it detects a colon, anything indented, if there is a space to the left of the first statement, it executes as a single block. Okay, and you can see that this if condition has got an indented break statement, right? So there is a colon and then there is an indentation. So those are the two important things to keep in mind. And it breaks, it means that it breaks out of the while loop. So now we are in the second while loop here. And if so we are trying to convert, right? So if I say hello here, it's going to give me an error because it's trying to convert that value into an integer, casting it in an integer and then raising it to the power of 2. Okay, so it actually exited because there was a runtime error. So it didn't even print the by statement because right here the result was like the reply was not stop. The reply was something else. And then when it hit the line 38, it basically runtime error. Okay, so let me run this again. And the first while loop is stop. Let's say 5. So when I do that, you get raised to the power of 2, which is good, right? And when I type stop here, it's going to say bye, meaning that it's good, and it went away. So now it's on the third while loop, right? So the issue with this is where I'm gradually progressing from a simple while loop to a little bit of complex while loop here. Can you guys give me a second? My dog is doing some crazy stuff. I'll be right back. Sorry, guys. So we're gradually, handling the exceptions or error handling, right? So it's important to understand that. So I was able to gracefully exit out of this because I, carefully gave the right answer. So it exited out of that while loop, and now we are here. In here, we are checking, right? So in this while loop, if I say hello, it's going to give me an error message like, bad multiplied by 8 times, meaning that this is checking. The first thing is it's checking whether the reply equals stop. It's not stop, it's something else. And then it comes into this else if condition, right? In this condition is checking whether the reply is a digit, right? It's not a digit. Uh, if not, right? So we're saying if it's not a digit, then print bad, right? So if it's a digit, then it will raise it to the power of 2. So now you're properly handling the exceptions, right? So if I do 8 here, it'll say 64. And then when I stop, it exits. So, so that's the third while loop, right? So in the fourth while loop, we are doing slightly different, right? We're doing a try and exception handling. So we're trying whether uh, we can trying by converting into an integer, and if it doesn't convert into an integer, it prints the exception handling. It comes to the exception handling block. I need Anita. I know you had a issue last week, but I didn't get a chance to review that. But we can look into that. Uh, if this is not um, if it successfully converts into an integer, it comes into this else block, and where we are raising it to the power of 2 and doing the same thing. So in this case, if I say 8 here, it does 64 because this thing, uh, you can also try and do this print nom here, okay? So when you do this, uh, uh, so it's not printing for some reason. We'll come back to that. It should actually print a num here, but for some reason it's not printing. So anyway, it's doing a try block. In the try block, it's successfully able to convert into an integer. And oh, sorry, I'm still in this block. Should do this. Let's comment out these guys because we're going through this.
Kannan, what editor are you using for this?
Tony.
Sorry?
Tony, it's called Tony. You can see on the top left hand side, THONNY.
Okay, all right.
So you can see that when I do this while loop, it's able to, when I print the number is 8. It's able to print the successfully convert this, right? If for example, if I do hello, it immediately, this one raised an exception and it jumped into the exception handling block, and then it made it as a bad here, right? Type 10 and makes it 100. So now let's stop it. It goes to the next while loop. In here, we're doing slightly different, right? So if you do this is another way of doing this. If you do like a float, and it's again going to error, right? So if I do hello, which is a string, it falls into this. But then if I enter like 7 here, it converts into a floating point number, which is 49.0, right? So if I do, let me comment this block, and let's say, I use integer here. So when I do an integer, it'll be okay if I do an integer, right? So let's say if I do 8.0, it's going to throw an error message because it's not able to convert a floating point into an integer. Okay, so but the other way works fine. So if I do a floating point, it converts an integer into a floating point. So you can see that even though I'm giving an integer, it converts a result into a floating point. And I can do floating point as well. And if I do a floating point of 8.2, it gives me the raises to the power of 2 and gives me 67.24. Okay. So let me stop this, and that is done, right? So these are the things that we discussed, or the last section we discussed last week. You know, this is the simple statements. So let me go back here. All right. So with that, let's go into assignments and expressions. Okay. And again, you know, all these are based on the, you know, the chapters that is there in the Learning Python book, right? So there are a couple of variations here that, you know, that you guys should understand, and, you know, I'll give you some time to copy this code and practice, right? So in here we have spam, right? And so when you do this, clear, let me run this. See, if I do spam equals spam, right? So what is spam? So it basically assigns the value, this literal value or text value, into this variable called spam, right? So if let's take another example, right? So I have spam comma ham equals yum comma yum, right? So which is a tuple assignment. So meaning that this one is going to get assigned to spam and this one will get assigned to ham, right? So if you do spam, well, it changed, the values change down below, but if you print here, so you can see that the first two values are this lowercase yum and then uppercase yum, right? And I'm printing spam here. Now this is a list assignment, right? Spam comma ham equals, you can make it as a list assignment. So you're assigning values to a list, right? So if you print, like for example, if you print you can see that it prints the values here, right? So because this spam comma ham itself is a list definition, and the values for that list definition is defined here. So it prints that yum comma yum here. Now the next one is when you specify a comma b comma c comma d equals spam, it'll shred this, right? It's a sequence alignment or generalized sequence alignment. It'll take each character and then assigns a value over here, right? So if you print so if you print here, it'll give you these values because it takes each character, assigns it to, so A equals S, B equals P, C equals A, and D equals M, right? So then there is an interesting concept called unpacking in Python, right? So far, it's very simple. You get the point, right? This is a slightly interesting concept here. So when you do a comma asterisk b equals a variable, it will take the first character, assigns it to A, and when it sees this asterisk, it takes the remaining characters and assigns it into B as a list. So you can see that the PAM is assigned to B, which is a list. So B becomes a list. Does it make sense?
How do we access the second element of B here? If you want to print only the second element of B, that's an A.
Second element, oh, of B here. Okay, I see. Okay,
So is
so
that like an array, like
yeah,
square
so
bracket 2 or 1?
yeah, so if you do 1,
Okay.
right? Yeah, you can get A, right?
Ah,
That's what
got
it
it.
means. When I do a colon here, it means everything.
Okay.
You can see that PAM here. So, or I can remove everything and just type P here. Okay. Now the next one is spam equals ham equals lunch. So when you do spam equals spam star equals 42, it means, or star or asterisk means that it multiplies 42 times here by whatever value. Okay. Um, Python has got a weird way of doing things, right? If I do spam, so or ham, right? Ham in this case is lunch, right? If I do ham plus equals, or yeah, plus equals 10. Okay, you you cannot, you can only concatenate a string value, right? So if I say ham plus equals, okay, it adds that the string yummy to ham, or the value of ham, which is lunch, right? And adds that value, right? But if I give ham plus equals 10, it doesn't, it gives me a runtime error. Now I can also do this, ham asterisk equals 10, it multiplies by 10, right? So it repeats, sorry, ham star equals 10. And if you print ham, it multiplies or concatenates this 10 times. So that's how it works here. So the same thing with sequence as well, like running again. Um, so when I'm assigning, so in this case, a sequence equals, this is a list sequence, and I'm assigning x comma asterisk y equals sequence, meaning that the value of x will be 1 and y will be another sublist of sequence like 2, 3, 4. Okay. And when I take the list and assign it to individual variables, it will assign those values like 1, 2, 3, and 4 to individual variables here like S, T, U, and V. Okay. And when I do this, an asterisk W equal, adding another variable like asterisk W, there is nothing to assign, right? It has already assigned 1 to S, 2 to T, 3 to U, and 4 to V, right? And there is nothing to assign. So when you look for the value W here, it'll give me an empty list because there's nothing there. So the S and T and all those things have got value here, right? So T is 2, U is 3, V is 4, right? Because they all got assigned here. Any questions on this? So far, so good?
Yeah, I just have a quick question on line 6.
Line 6. Okay.
So normally we give some name for each list, right? So, but here we are assigning list to another list, but there is no name for the list. So,
The
in
name
that
itself
case,
is
what is that? Is there any default naming convention?
no, this itself is the name of the list. That's the beauty of Python.
But then here it's okay. There are only 2 elements, but let's say there are like 100 elements. Then
Yeah,
what
I
is
mean,
the
see,
purpose of doing this?
the idea is not to use 100 elements in that format, right? Which is, these are various syntaxes that are available for you, right? How it's called list assignment. Like, how do you do positional assignment to the list, right? I can have, a equals this value, right? Um, so this is the list, right? Or I can have uh, assigning, I cannot think of a good example. Let's say, you have a list of variables, and then you have a list of values, and you want to assign the list of values to the list of variables positionally. How would you do that?
Yeah, no, this is again interesting. So now that we have named as A also, so if now include one more element to this one, so will it get added to both or all three of them?
uh, Meaning what?
If
Like
you
another
add,
element here?
yeah, no, not here. Later on the next line, if we append or
Okay.
add one more element.
Okay. Like this.
So yeah, so obviously it will add to A. Will it add to that spam, ham, and yum yum as well?
Let's try it out. What do you think will happen?
Based on whatever we covered so far, it looks like it should add to all three because all three of them are
Right.
equal to each other.
Right. So in here, I think it's a.x. No, it should. Because we are assigning. Uh, let's remove this here.
It will be A dot append and then
No, it's.
bracket.
Let's do this because this is. Uh, let's say L1, right?
It will be bracket and then text, right?
Actually, I think this should be this. Sorry, I think I made a mistake.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so L1. So we have that, right?
Yeah. But how about the other two lists on line 6? How do I check if it got appended to those also?
Well, the spam ham value changed here because it made, so let's see. Print, oh no, we have printed, right? So let's see. Here, L1. Okay, so this is what you want me to do, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't change because we have assigned it to another variable. We see, the thing is, if you make this right, if you say L1 equals spam comma ham, right? Let's try that. Because right now you're assigning a value, same value to two different places, right?
Yep.
Okay, so it's still right. Now, oh, we didn't print. So it's two different values.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
that, in the line 6, Pam is getting the value yum and Ham is getting the value uppercase M.
Yeah.
Can we add one more value in that next to yum test and then print? So it will only, my understanding is only spam and ham will get those two values and the rest, the test is used in like not used, right? That's what is going to happen now when we print spam and ham.
Actually, you should see an error because it's positional assignment, right?
Okay, it will say one more value needed. I mean, assigned.
The
Okay.
unpack because there is no equivalent variable here.
Got it.
Hmm.
So that's what it means.
Okay.
Right, okay. So okay, so now we have another example here, right? Nudge equals 1, wink equals 2, a comma b equals nudge comma wink, right? So this is easy, right? Because now the value 1 will be assigned to a and the value 2 will be assigned to b. Okay. And now that's simple, right? Now there is another variable called string and that value equals spam. And when you assign a comma b comma c comma d equals string, then a will be s, b will be p, a, c will be a, and m, d will be m, right? So you can also do this, right? Another way of slicing is you can specify, let's say, you don't want to assign it to, we don't know what, this could be a big string, right? In this case, it's just 4 characters, spam. But it could be a big string and you cannot be counting the strings, but you want to slice a specific index. Like for example, if I say string of 0, string of 1, and then anything after string, the second position is assigned to C. So A will get S, B will get P, and C will get AM. So if you print C, for example, here, you should see C will be like AM. So let's do that. you can see that C got AM, right? So that's what it means, because you're taking everything. So position 0 is S, position 1 is P, position 2 is A. From A towards the end, assign it to the value C, right? Or the variable C. That's what it means. So you can also do this, right? You're creating a list, right? So in here, you're saying ABC equals list of starting string. We went through this in the index slicing of strings, right? So when you specify :2, what happens?
It starts at character 2.
So if you do A, comma, B, comma, okay, what is string? String is span, right? So A equals, so A, comma, B, comma, C equals, let's copy this line. So what is A? There's another way of doing this as well, right? So we are basically slicing and concatenating here. Any questions on this?
So we sliced. So A got a S. That is still the first
Let's say A
character.
equals list. I'll do one at a time, okay? So we got this, right? So it's, sorry, yeah, this is the right one, right? So we're adding this. Now we're adding, so that's A. So we're saying A comma B comma C equals the whole list, right? So initially A is getting this, right? And what is string 2, which is AM? Okay.
Right. Mhm.
So we are, so what happens to a list of string 2? No, actually, this is not list, right? We're doing string 2. Made a mistake here. Does this make sense? So now when you assign this to A, B, and C, A becomes S, B is P, and C becomes AM. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Got it.
Yeah. So that's what this means. It's slightly complicated, but you can see that the first one is a list, and then the second one is without a list. You're slicing, and then you're concatenating that.
Right. So all those elements are still inside a list, and then it gets assigned.
Exactly.
Got it.
So this is, see, Python is so versatile language. You have to really think about these things. Um, there are so many ways to slice and dice in Python. So that's why it's important to keep reviewing this and practicing this. So you get good at it, right? So in here, see, there is another interesting concept here. I'm not doing a list on the right hand side, but I'm doing a list on the left hand side. So if I do A comma B comma C equals, if I do this, so now what is A? And what is B? It's P. And what is C? AM. Same thing, right? It's called nested sequences. So we are basically assigning the value, the string 0 to 2. What is string? If you type string colon 2, it's SP, right? It it's the first two characters, and is what we are getting, right? And the string 2 colon means last two characters, AM, right? So the AM gets assigned to C, and AB gets S and P. So if you do this instead of A comma B comma C equals, let's try a little bit, right? So now this, do you think this will give me an error or what?
Because the first one has two assignments, right? But you have only A there. That's
Yeah,
only one element. So yeah, it will give an array.
it's because there is a list here, right? And too many values to unpack is what we are getting there, right? So if I do this, so now A becomes S, and what is B comma C? A and M. Because I'm starting from 2, actually it should start from, if I do this, now this will still show me an error. Because there are too many values. The list doesn't have enough variables. So if I do this instead of, like for example, I need to put another D, then this will work. So A will be S, and B comma C comma D will be PAM. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I have a question on line 46.
mhm.
So even without that list AB, it will still get assigned the individual character. So what is the use of having those two inside a list? Because A is getting S and B is getting P as an individual value, but we made that as a list. So how do we use that?
Which line are you talking about? Line
46?
46. Okay. Um, so what we're doing is we're actually assigning, we're extracting this. See, when you do a string colon 2, right? What we're doing is we're actually getting a string value. It's a substring of span. Okay. And when you assign it, if you assign it to say x equals um, or h equals string 2, right? The value of h is still a string value, right? It's SP is a string value. But in 46, what we are doing is we are assigning to a list. Okay.
Mhm.
So when you do this, A comma B is it takes the individual elements and assigns it to the list variables here. So the list variables is A and B. So I can be using this variable, right? This list variable, in other places. So you're unpacking the string, and you're assigning positionally into a list variable. That's what this means. This line 46 means. So in other words, what we're saying is, hey, you can assign a substring to another variable, or you can assign the substring to a list variable. When you assign it to the list variable, then it unpacks the string and assigns it to individual variables. Now let's say, in here, if I do a comma, let's do this, right? A comma B comma C equals the same thing, right? And instead of saying I'll do 3 and then starting 3 here. So this will give me an error because there is not enough list variables here.
Correct.
So instead I can do this. If I specify an asterisk here, then it's perfectly good. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens is A is S and B is P and A because the remaining characters are assigned to B as a list element.
Oh, I thought it's going to be PA as a one string. So,
No, it unpacks it because remember this is a list,
okay. Hmm.
right?
So it's a sublist again. B is,
Is a
if you have to
yes.
access the element, we have to again say B0 and
Yeah.
B1 too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you do a B
Yeah,
of 0, then it's P.
Mm, okay.
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's assigning to a sublist inside. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why this language is so powerful. It's you don't see these kind of things. If you have to do the same thing in like Java or C sharp, like there's a lot of work you need to do. But this thing is pretty versatile from this perspective, right?
Mm.
But
So
then that also means that we have to be very careful also while coding.
exactly, and there is no compile time um, checking, right? There is there are tools that you can use it, but you'll run into runtime errors if you don't do this. Now look at this one, right? So when I do this a comma b, it'll be individually unpacked, right? As because it's assigned to a sublist here, right? SP is assigned to a sublist, whereas C is just another string variable.
So there is a concept of array also, or is this list also, it's a versatile name. The list is also an array, or
You could say it, yeah. The list, no, the list is usually what we use it for arrays as well.
okay.
And okay, so now let's look at how are you guys doing so far? Is it making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So so let's look at this one, right? So L equals 1, 2, 3, 4, which is a list, very simple. So when you run this, right? So we're assigning front. So while L means that it it loops through individual elements within this list, right? So the first one would be L will be 1, right? So front will be uh, L of 0, which is 1, and then now equals, you're reassigning the value of L into anything that starts from position 1, which is 2, 3, and 4. So when you print front comma L, front is 1, L is 2, 3, 4. When you go to the next loop, right, because it loops through, right, the next element is 2. So front will become 2 and L will become 3 and 4. And then the third one is um, front is 3, L is 4 within the list. And then the last one is front becomes 4 and L becomes an empty list. Okay, so it's just a way of looping through this. You don't have to know how many elements are there in the list. It just loops through till the end, right? So that's what this means. Now this is a very interesting concept. So for a comma asterisk b comma c in this, we're printing a, b, and c. So let's see what happens here, right? So A is assigned 1 in this case, right? So again, think of it as this is one loop and this is the second loop, right? So, so what happens here is when you do for A comma asterisk B comma C, it means that A will be assigned 1, okay, and B will be assigned. So can you explain me why this is assigned like 4 here?
Which one? The C or the value 4?
Yeah.
Um, because B is asterisk, right? So that means it will take 2 elements and then C will get the last element. That's a 4 or a
Right.
8, right?
Why not 2, 3, and 4 for B?
Because I think
Because
there are 3. Did it already know, like, because there are 3, the last one it already assigned it to, I mean, it reserved the last element for a C.
Because
Yeah.
it's a sequential assignment. So it has to assign 4 to C, and whatever is remaining, then it will be assigned to B.
If you
Exactly.
add one more element there, I think B will be 3 elements,
Correct.
right?
Or if you do like
So
B here, let's say if I do what happens here.
B will have 1 element, only 2,
Yeah.
2 and 6.
Oh, sorry. Right? It makes
So
sense.
I have a quick question. I'm a bit confused here with the asterisk sign.
Mhm.
Like, how does it work? I mean, sometimes it takes two arguments. Or is it a tuple or it's a list?
This is a list.
And I'm a bit confused with the asterisk sign. Like,
So,
how does
so,
it
so
work?
the asterisk is like, for example, let's review this, right? So if you do, let's say L2 equals Python, right? Let's say this, right? So what is L2? It's Python. Now, if I say A comma asterisk B equals L2, right? So what is A? T. What is B? YTHON, right? Because it knows that there are only 2 elements, okay? And it takes the first one and assigns it to A, and then it takes the remaining, the asterisk B, and assigns it to B as a list. So Python understands that, I have 2 variables on the left-hand side and I have 1 string value. When I unpack the string, I'm going to take the first element, assign it to here, and then take the second element, assign the remaining strings, right? So now if I do this, A comma star B comma C equals, okay, L2. Okay, so now A is again P, B is everything except the last one because it's positional, right? The last one is N, and that N gets assigned to C because it equally divides it, right? It knows that if I say A comma B comma C equals L2, it'll give me an error because it's when it unpacks the string Python, it doesn't have enough variables on the left hand side to assign it, right? It gives me an error. But if I do A comma asterisk B comma C equals L2, it's okay because it looks at it, it says, okay, the first element of the string Python goes to A, the last character goes to C, whatever is remaining goes to B.
Is it possible like we can do like asterisk A or asterisk C something? Can we change that way also?
You can try that, yeah. So if I do asterisk A comma B comma C equals L2. Can somebody guess what will be the value of B and C?
B and C will be last two characters. So the B will be, what is the string again?
O
Python,
and
right?
N.
Python is a
So
string.
B will be O and C will be N.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's what it is. So A is PYTH, right? And B equals O, N equals, sorry, C equals N, right?
Got it. Thank you.
That's pretty powerful.
Very powerful. Yeah.
And multiple asterisks won't be supported, right? It will error out.
No, not necessarily. We'll try.
So how does it
I
divide in
think
that
so.
case?
It does get confused.
It,
How
it,
will
it,
it divide?
Yeah.
yeah. In some cases it will, but that's, I don't want to get there. So, but let's see, you're saying this one, right?
Yeah. How does
Yeah.
it know how many B and C you
Yeah.
should it?
So
Yeah.
two start expressions in an assignment is not possible.
Yeah. Makes sense.
All right. Okay. So do you guys want to take a 5-minute break? We
Yes, please.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to go make some tea.
all right. Let's 6:04. Let's meet 6:10. Or
Okay.
oh, maybe do you want a 10-minute or 5-minute?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, 6:15. Let's meet at 6:15.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Shali, we're on a break. We should we should start in about 5 minutes.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, guys, are you back?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay. What about others? Rishma, Shailesh, are you back? Shali?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay. Guys, please let me know when everybody is back, or should I get started? Shali, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
I guess maybe we can get started. So Shali, you missed the first hour. So we talked about assignments and expressions, statements. We went through statements. We did a pretty extensive analysis of assignments and expressions. Now I want to do the print, Python print, right? You know, what are the different options available in printing in Python? So before I do that, I'm going to delete some files here. Tip1 and tip2. So let's start video, share my screen. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So do you guys understand what std out means? So when you import a sys, so sys is a system package or module, right? Package within Python, and it gives you a lot of stuff like, you know, standard. It's basically device drivers that are uh, used to communicate for I/O operations. Like you can do a lot of stuff here. So if you um, let's check it out. Okay, so when I do a help on sys.stdout, um, it gives you the definition of what this means, right? So what happens is by default, so when you run this, you can see that X, Y, and Z are values assigned as 10, 20, and 30. So the system.stdout converting them into a string variable, concatenating with a space, and displaying X, Y, and Z. Okay. And so when you do a sys.stdout equals open a file, and then when you do a print, okay, so that print will be written into this log.txt file. So the log.txt file is here. So you can see that the value is printed over here. Okay, so that's what it means. So the first one is it's printing this value, because the first one, the std out means it's the default user interface, right? So now if I you know why this is erroring out here? There is no syntax error, but what does it mean? It says IO operation on closed file. Can anybody guess?
I mean the system out is not closed before the print?
Rishma, I cannot hear you very well.
The file you're working on to execute that is closed, so it is not able to execute the code.
Right, that's what the error says. But can you guess why it's erroring out? I mean, like a little bit more details.
Because we had changed our standard output from regular interface to that log file, which we opened and closed. So now system is not sure about where exactly to write.
Exactly. That's the reason, because the standard output in line number 6, when you run it, the standard out was writing it to the console here. Okay, then we're changing the standard output, okay, to something different, to a file. And then when you print the values, it goes into that file. Okay, so, and then we're closing it, we're not, not debugging. So now you can see that the value keeps increasing in this file because every time you run it, it keeps appending to this file. Okay, so that's what it means. So now let's comment this line of coding. Let's uncomment this one. So in this case, what happens? So when you run this one, see, now you can see when I do a print statement back here, it displayed print, right? So if I say print hello world, it'll print, because before I reassign the standard out to a log file, I'm saving the standard output, the previous state of the standard output, into a temporary variable. Okay. So now I'm opening the log file. I'm printing some values here like spam 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. Close the file. Now reassigning the temp value back to standard out. So now it goes back to the default value that standard output had before line 12. So if you look at the log file here, you will see that spam 1, 2, 3 are added here because the code was having those 2 lines. Is that clear?
So, like, why, like, what are we trying to achieve here? Like, can
So what are we trying to achieve is, explaining what this standard out means, right? Printing. It's a concept of Python printing. So when you do a print, by default, it prints to the console. Okay. And when you write it or print it, it prints to the default console. And if you're changing the default console, say that, I want to write it to a file, then you can do this. Like in this case, in line 12, we're specifying that sys.standardoutput equals a log file, where we are saying that anything I'm printing from now on after line number 12 will go into a file. So when you print spam, when you print 1, 2, 3, all these are not printed on the console here. If you see line 13 and 14 is not printed here. All you see here is when you run this code, you only see back here, which is line 17. What happened to line 13 and 14? They all got written into this file log.text file, right? So if you look at the log.text file, the spam 1, 2, 3 um, is written to that file. So that's what it means.
okay, okay, thank you. And A stands for?
Append.
Okay, okay, thanks.
I have a question here. So, isn't it enough just to close that standard out? Why do we have to reinitialize it to the temp again?
Because it's still pointing to the file.
Uh,
Even though you need, see, the standard output is by default it's to the console. We are not reassigning, right? You're still pointing to a file. Whether you close the file or open the file, it's still pointing to that.
so if we remove comment line 16, so we don't get the print back here on the console.
No. We'll try that. In fact, you'll get an error. You get an error, IO operation on close file.
Okay, got it. We have to reinitialize it.
So if we don't reassign to any temp or any variable, then we cannot write. I mean, it would be run. We'll run it only once, and then after that, we cannot write it to that file again, right?
You have to open the
would
file again and write it. Yeah. If you closing the file is important to flush the output to the disk. Okay, if you don't close the file, like the stdout.close, if you don't call this function, whatever you're printing here will not be returned to the file. See, I did W because it'll overwrite the file. So let's see. So it overwrote the file, right? So every time you write it, it'll be overwriting the file. Let's say, you know, I'm not closing this. Okay. So let's comment this line and run this again. The file will not have any value. Well, see, it has the old value there. So if you delete this file, I don't know if it'll allow me to delete. So let's delete it. Let's run this again. Back here, log.text is created. Well, it's actually flushing it because I reassigned it to the temp and it flushed by default, it's flushing it out. Maybe that's, I don't even have to close the file in that case. So let's say I don't reassign it here and I don't close it here, okay? And I'll also comment this line. So let's run this. See, the log.file, the text file is 0 kilobytes because there's nothing there. Even though I wrote to the file, because I didn't do a close. So if I type here sys dot std out dot close. Okay, now you see 1 kilobyte here. It added the values because that's how it flushes the value. Does that make sense? So that's important line. The std out dot close is important. And this is usually, you know, very true with any programming languages. If you're using a file operation, you'll have to close the file so you can flush the output to the disk. Otherwise, the file will not be written.
So assigning to a temp variable, it means like we can write multiple times in the
Yeah.
times, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So that's one approach, right? There's another approach here. So here, I'm not changing. Let's comment this guy. 3. And 4. So in here, I'm not, as you can see, I'm not assigning the std out to a temp variable, but I'm opening the log file. So let's say W here, so it makes it easier. Opening W means overwrite it. And when I do a print XYZ, I am specifying a file equals this log file, the handle to that log file. Okay. So we're basically printing to a file like object. So let's run this. You can see that the first one is this print, the line 21 is print XYZ, right? And that's what it printed here, that line, right? And then I'm doing a log.close. I'm doing back here, and then I'm opening the file for reading, and then I'm printing that value. So in here, I don't have to do any of those things, the std out, right? I really don't have to do any of those things. I don't have to save the state. I don't have to, reassign the state, any of those things. That's one approach. In this approach, which is actually a better approach, is that I'm using a file object here. So let's look at the log file, because since I opened it on write-only mode, you can see that the 10, 20, 30, which is what I'm printing to the file, XYZ is 10, 20, and 30, right? So that those values are printed to the file object. And so this is very simple. And then the last one is reading, opening the file, the log.txt file, and reading the content and printing those values here. So that's what it prints and displays the value. Any questions so far?
Hey, Kannan, so is log a keyword there, or is it just the name of a file, or just a string?
Log? No, the
Yeah.
log is handle, this one.
It's
a
just
variable.
a string, right? Okay.
It's a variable to, I wouldn't say string, it's a handle to the file. It's a file object.
Okay.
So
See,
in this
dynamic
case,
typing, right? I can have log equals, so it'll throw an error here. If I say log equals hello world, right? It's dynamic typing. So now it'll throw an error because there is nothing like you see that it's a string object because it's dynamic typing, right? First, when I assign the open file to the log object, it's a handle to the file handle. The next line, I'm changing the value of log into a string value, right? And Python will do garbage collection and remove this particular memory location, right? So that handle will be removed at some point of time. But it's dynamic typing, so it's a variable, yeah. But it means, in this case, it means that it's a handle to a file that you're opening in write mode, right?
Right. Because we mentioned in line 20 file equals log. So is that where we are saying log is actually a file object?
When line 20,
Line 20,
line 20.
file equals
Yeah,
log.
yeah. No,
That's where we are actually saying log is a file object.
well, we are saying that, yes, we're saying that, hey, you want to print it to a file, and the handle to the file is this log.
no, I think we are saying it's a file on line 19, where we are saying that log.txt is the file. We are opening that file. In 20, we are just asking it to write to that file.
Yeah, that's what I meant. What I'm saying is that you're saying this is a syntax for writing to a file. So this is a reserved variable, right? We're saying that I want you to print XYZ. So in line 21, I'm printing XYZ, and that XYZ is printing on the console, which is the default standard out, right? In line 20, I'm saying print XYZ, but don't print XYZ to the standard out. Instead, print XYZ to a file object. And file equals, so let's say, if you specify this as log1, And when you say file equals log, it's going to throw an error because there is no log defined. So you need to specify log1 here because log1 is a handle to the file. Okay, so this part, um, oh yeah, log1.close. Okay, I'll make it simple, make it go back to log. So you got the point, right? So the point is that this is a handle, the log is a handle to the file, which is open and write only mode. And then when I'm printing, I'm saying print to a file object. Okay, and that's what it means.
So in Java, we say, no, like for example, in Java, it would be a file log. That means log is a variable of type file. And then we open the log as in 919 saying log equals open the stream. So that's what I was trying to understand. If it is, are we saying log is an object, object file in 20? So it
No,
has to.
it is on line 19. Line 19, we are saying log.text is assigned to log, and that is a type of file.
Okay, we don't need to give the file there. Okay.
Yeah, you don't need to do file method or any of those things. We're just saying that I am pointing log in this case to a file name, and internally what happens is when you click, the open file will create a handle to that file and assign it to the log variable.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are we doing on line 24? I didn't understand that one.
We are opening the file in read mode and then reading the content.
So
where does it
Kannan,
open?
Yeah, somebody had something. Asit?
yes, yeah, hi, this is Ashit. So this is like an implicit assignment, right? More like a delegate thing when you're saying a file is equal to log. In other words, file takes the place of a log. I mean, that holds that variable. It's a variable holds the value, and then you can assign open that.
Right. It passes to the print function. It passes. So the print function looks at it and says, okay, you're asking me to print to a file object and not to the standard output. Okay. And if it cannot resolve the file object, the handle to the file object, it's going to throw an error because it doesn't have a handle to the file object. And the line 19 would have successfully opened the file in write mode, and there is a handle for that, and that handle is passed in line 20. Okay, in line 21 there is no file object, right? So when the print statement, when Python looks at the print statement, there is no print to a file object, so it goes to the default standard output, which is in this case the console.
Sorry. So when you're saying print XYZ, you're saying that you're not giving the file object to print, right?
Well, so it happens on both, right? So line 20 is printing to a file.
Right.
And line 21 is printing because there is no file representation there. It's
Right.
actually printing to the standard output.
Okay.
Right?
So without the handle, can't we directly open the log file? The handle is required here, or just an example?
Well, this is another example, right? So
okay, yeah.
this is another way of writing it out. Okay. Let me show you the other example, so you'll get an idea. Okay. So let's. So here is another one, just a precursor, right? There is a standard error, right? That you can print in two different ways. You can write it to a standard error output, or you can do a print and then you can say file equals sys.standard error. So the file is part of the syntax. Okay. So if let's say let's run this, right? When I run this one, you can see that both these lines, line 26 and line 27, gives you the same output, right? Let's say, in this case, I open this log file, and then instead of writing it here, I'll say log. Okay. So the log file would have captured that value. Now, because I didn't flush it, right? Because I didn't close the log file. So I need to do log.close. And now the contents of, that bad 8 times would be flushed into the disk, right? So now the log, see, you can see that there's 1 kilobyte here. Open it, you can see that that value is flushed into that file. So that's another way. So you can either do this, or you can say sys.std error, and it'll print, so that's the idea. The idea is that you don't have to do assign, standard output, reassign the values of standard output with a file handle. You don't have to do any of those things. Keep the standard output and standard error as pointing to default values, in this case console, but then use this file moniker in your print statement to assign it to anywhere. Well, see, in this case, you don't even have to do this. You can say print bad times 8. That by default it'll send it to standard output, right? So it's doing that. That's what it means. So so then now the next one is let's
And then I have a quick question.
uh-huh.
Like there are 3 lines, 26, 27, 28. So all the 3 lines, I mean, I know like sys dot standard stderr standard error, it's getting written on the file. And but I mean, console answer is just the third last line and 2 lines are in the red. I'm a bit confused here.
That's a good catch. So anytime you write to a standard error, like both these lines, it means that you're writing an error, and that's why Python outputs as red color. The 28, line 28 is just a print statement. It's like a string multiplied by 8 times. And so that's why you see it in black, if that's your confusion.
So first 2 lines should be written in file, right?
No, we're not doing that, right? We're not reassigning. I'm not saying file equals log here. See, sys.standard error will always write to the default console.
Oh, okay. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's comment these these lines. And let's look at this one, right?
How do you add comment to multiple lines? You selected the multiple lines and then?
Sorry, I didn't understand your question.
How did you add comment to all 3 lines?
Oh, all 3. Alt key and 3.
Oh, hold and 3. Okay.
Yeah, and uncomment is Alt and 4.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is another way of writing, right? Redirecting. So remember we had like 2 lines of code here, right? In here we said log equals open log text file in write mode. And then we are assigning file equals log. In this case, you don't have to do the 2-step process. You can do just 1 step. So you can say file equals open the file name in write mode and then redirect this output over there. Okay. And another way of doing this is, if you want to manually send the values to a file, you can also do open the file, another file, temp2 in a write mode, and then, dot write, you can do it. So all these are different ways of printing values. So you can, depending on your requirement, you can do it. So now I created like temp1 and temp2. So if you click on that, you have temp1 and temp2. So temp1 is some So 10 and 20 are printed there, and temp2 same, right? So it'll have some other values here, 10 and 20, right? So that's another way of um, doing it. Okay. So any questions so far on the print statement? So again, guys, I'm just following through each chapter in that book, Learning Python. So this is in a Python print, right? So these are some examples on how do you open a file. You know, the key pointer is that when you're printing to a file, you have two different options. Either you can change the standard output from a default console to a file name or a file handle. um, and the problem with that approach is, let's say, you know, your code needs to write to multiple files, and that's not a scalable approach, right? So you cannot be keep reassigning the standard output to different file names. So the best thing to do is, you know, like open the files and then, you know, flush the values to the file directly using the print statements, and don't mess around with standard output. That's a takeaway from this lecture.
But can't we open like a multiple files parallel and write it parallel?
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. You can have multiple files. So like you're saying here, you know, I have multiple files created, right? So I have temp1 in this line and temp2 in this line. So I'm opening those two files and I'm writing. So these are parallel writing, right? So I'm writing to do different files, different values.
No, what I meant is, like for example, in the line 30, right? You opened one file, temp1, as a file object. So I can do the same thing with a file equal open temp2 and either in write mode or any other mode, and then do the different operation on different files. That's standard
So
usually.
like here, file equals another open. Is that what you're saying?
No, on the second line, for example. But
Yeah, you
it
can do that.
like
That's
it
you can
temp
either do that, or you can do this approach, the open file, right? So I
correct.
can do the same thing. So if I say print uh, x comma y comma file equals open, I'll say temp3 dot w. You can do this too, because it'll write it to another file, right? It's the same thing.
Okay. Okay.
You can do that.
Okay. Got it.
All right. So this is done. So I'm going to. There's no questions. I want to move. Yes. Somebody had a question. All right. Okay. Thought I heard some question. Okay. So I'm going to quickly. We have 10 minutes. I want to talk about functions. Okay. Sorry, guys. 1 second. All right. So just wanted to talk about functions, right? So in here we have this is a function definition in Python. So you should always have a def, like def, and then you have in this case I have a function called times, and it takes two variables, right, x and y, and it returns a value x times y, right? So when I run this code, let me create this. So when I do times is a function, right? So times 5 comma 5 will return 25, because it calls this function times, passes these two values, right? X is 5, y is 5. So return x times y, which is 5 times 5 is 25, right? So that's one thing, right? The next one is intersect. So you have another function called intersect that takes two sequences, right? Sequence 1 and sequence 2, And so it's very interesting, right? So this is an example. Like when I do intersect, and pass these two values, spam and scam. Okay. So it gives me the intersection, right? So what it does is, it's just an example, right? So I have an empty list here called result. It's an empty list. And I am taking for X in sequence one. Sequence one here is spam. And when it goes through individual elements within that sequence one. So for X in sequence one, if the value, so the first value is S here, and if that is in sequence two, then we are appending that to the result, right? So in this case, the for loop will look for this first value, which is S here. It looks through the scam, sees if S is in the scam, then it adds it to the result, which is S here, right? Looks at P, is P there in scam? Answer is no, so it doesn't append. So it skips this one, and then it goes to A. A is there in scam, so it adds A. And then M is also there in scam, so it adds that M into the result and then returns the result, right? So similarly, if you do this one, right, intersection. So this is all, some examples of how you would use this. So in this case, the answer should be 1 and 4 because 2 and 3 should not be there. You'll get 1 and 4 because in the first loop or the first list, sub list, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, of which 1 and 4 is part of the second sub list. So this is the intersection. So this is how it does. So this is another example of a function. So function is a self-contained body that has a bunch of code that you execute.
Question here. So the function have to be defined before we call it, or in Python, is it powerful enough to figure it out? Even if it's
Python is an interpreted code, right? So you need to have the function definition before you do anything.
okay.
It's not like Java or C# or C++ where you can have the function anywhere in the module and then you can do it. So Python needs to know this. Okay. So so the next one is global variables and local scope, right? So in here, if I run this code, right, X equals 99. So let's run this, right? So I'm going to comment all these guys. Right. My mouse is acting up, so let me see. So when we run this, right? So we have X equals 99, which is a global scope. And then there is a function definition called func. And then I have a local scope. The same X variable is there, and I have a different value. Now I'm calling the function, okay? And then I'm printing X. What do you think will be the value of X here?
99.
Okay, any reason?
Because it's global and inside the function is local.
Yeah,
so the print X is printing outside the function, it's taking 99.
Exactly. So you can see that the value is 99 here. Okay. So now there is another way of doing this, right? So if let me comment this and uncomment this guy. Okay. Now when I run this, right, I should, what should be the value of X here?
88.
88. The reason is because I am redefining the scope of the variable. We're saying within that function, we're saying global, the variable X is global variable and not the local variable. So when I assign the value, now I will see 88 here because I'm changing the scope. So in Java or C++, we would be using X would be defined as a static variable. So when you define as a x as a static variable, then whatever values you are assigning to x will be will be assigned to that static variable, right? So that's how you define the global scope and the local scope in other programming languages. But in Java, in Python, you have to specify this global, right? This is one way of doing that. Any questions on this?
Yeah, I
Yes.
have a question. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Rashid.
Oh, sorry. So I was just saying, so sorry, Karan, I was trying to compare with C# or something. So once we define a variable outside the scope, we need to redefine it in Python again to
We're
get
not
the.
redefining, we're basically, I wouldn't say redefine or redeclaring, but we're saying, hey, inside this function, we're going to be referring to a global scope and not the local scope.
Okay, so we
Got
declare.
it?
Sorry, did it make sense?
No, I was not saying that. So we declare x is equal to 99, but we didn't define the data type or something, but we are assigning that, so we take that value. Again, we are inside the function, we are again declaring the same value, but with a new thing we passing it.
Yeah, I didn't hear you very well, Asit. So let me explain this, right? Outside line 24 is a global scope, right? So x equals 99. Okay. And then you're calling this function, and within that function, well, you're not calling, there's a definition of the function. And within the definition of the function, we're specifying, we're saying it's a global variable. We're saying the x is global, right?
Right.
And so when you after that, when you reassign x equals 88, it means that it is overwriting the value of x to 88.
Right. Okay.
And then when you call the function, I mean it. So if I don't call this function, it'll still be 99, right? If I
Right.
it'll still be 99 because I'm not calling the function. Okay, but
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
when
Okay.
I call the function and then print x, it'll be 88 because the function inside the function, I'm changing this value to a global, the x to be a global scope.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Basically, the global visibility is everywhere. It's like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So let me take one more example and then I want to wrap it up because I have a hard stop. So
Can I
let's,
ask one question, Kannan? Quick
yeah,
question.
yep.
So in the above example, line 18 to 22, if you add return x in the function, will that give the same result?
Yeah. Well, when you say return x, right? Well, in that case, the function will, so you mean here, right? So
Yeah,
let's,
yeah. Because right now we are not returning any value. So if we add return x, so will it change that answer to 88?
no, the function, it'll give both answers, right? So so the value, see the return x, because I'm not assigning this value. So if I say x equals function, so now I'll get the
So it will
value,
be 88.
Right. Right. Yeah.
right? Because a function returns a value, but that value is not captured anywhere. So if I
Okay.
capture it on a different variable or the same variable, then the value changes. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
So basically, there's a box. Its name is X. So whatever is stored in the box, that is what it is returned. Doesn't matter,
Yep,
what you return there. So
exactly.
that's how memory is allocated, right, in computing.
Mhm.
But you cannot assign a value of x outside of 99, otherwise it would be an error.
Outside of 99 means what?
Say 102.
Where?
So in the line 20, if you say x is equal to 120,
Mhm.
would it return 99 still, or to return 120?
It will return 120 because you're assigning,
No, it will return
when you're
99.
invoking the function, this function is going to return 120 and that's being assigned back to x. So when you do that, it's going to say 120 here.
So in that sense, what's the use of assigning x is equal to 99 to begin with in the line
So it's
18.
just explaining the concept of what is a global scope versus
Okay.
local scope.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So the global scope is like it's global outside of the function, right? It's not visible within the function. Okay, and in order to make it visible within the function, you have to use a variable, sorry, a reserved word called global and specify the variables that are global, right? So let me give you another example, and I have to end this class because I have to go somewhere. So if I do this, right, in this case, I have y comma z equals 1 comma 2. So in this case, y becomes 1, z equals 2. And now I am making x as global, right? Meaning the value of x, whatever I'm defining here, I'm saying that, you know, x will be visible outside of, so in this case, if I specify, instead of saying print x here, let's say I don't print x here, but I print x here. Okay. It will throw an error, but what we are saying here is I can, what it means here is that anything I'm assigning to the value of x inside this function will take the values of the global values, which is in this case y and z, right? So if I print x here, it gives me 6, even because y and z are global variables. Now I don't even have to do that. I can just comment this line and it'll still give me 6. You know why? Because any global scope can be accessed within within a function, and there is a rule called LEGB, which is locals. Um, what does E stands for? G is global. Let me get back to you on that. I'm just drawing a blank here. So there is a scope rule that we have to apply, and that's what it follows, LEGB. So in this case, and this is applicable to all languages as well, right? So any global variable can be accessed within a function, right? Any function or subfunctions, because they are global variables and they're variable. They can be accessed. Sorry, somebody said something.
E stands for enclosed.
Enclosed, correct, right? And G is global, right? And what does B stands for? I saw somewhere. Anyways, guys, I got to wrap up here. I am running late. I have to run. But what I'll do is I'll go through these functions again next week, and there's a lot more examples that I have. So I want to walk through each one of them and then show you how functions work, and then we can go into classes and other concepts.
And where do we access this, Kannan, these exercises?
You know what? I have to share this with you guys. Let me figure out. I'm thinking of putting this into GitHub and then giving you guys a link so you can download it.
Yeah, and Kannan, one more thing. Can you please share the link to that PDF book again? I think I lost it. So.
Asid, what was your question?
So no, I'm just a request. Can you please share the link to the PDF book for Python? I think I lost it.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Kannan. It was great, very interactive. This was my first time and really liked it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Kannan.
Thank you. And thank you for the patience with the dog as well.
No. Bye.
Bye.